I do want to get into what we can expect. But before we do, we'll get to the preview of Eagles-Rams. I want to just make sure that I take all of you on this magical adventure that we've been able to go on by virtue of some of the national media just going out of their way to kind of poo-poo the Eagles, to kind of poo-poo Jalen Hurts. At some point, I feel like these people are supposed to remember that they've been very wrong about the Eagles quite a few times. They've been quite wrong about a lot of the things that they've had to say about the Eagles this season. And it's weird because there's like a little bit of hypocrisy out there, but there's this weird thing that's happened of late where one national media pundit will say, well, the Eagles are maybe the best team in the NFC. They could maybe be the best team in the National Football League. And then at the same time, they can turn around and say, well, they're the most likely to get upset against the Packers. And then you look at this weekend and they say, well, the Eagles are probably the most likely to get upset by the Rams. That's the matchup that's most likely to go that way. Yeah, I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know if I believe that. I have legitimate concerns and I have legitimate questions about how this Rams team is going to react to potentially being stuck in the snow at Lincoln Financial Field. But I think the Rams are an exponentially better team than Minnesota. As I said at the beginning of the week, I was not afraid of Minnesota in the least bit. I was not a Sam Darnold believer. At no point this season did I think Sam Darnold was having this amazing career renaissance that was going to lead them to massive success. I just didn't see it. Not at all. Do I think the Rams are a scarier team? I do. Do I think that the Rams are in pole position to be the team that pulls off the biggest upset of the weekend? No, I don't. I still think that the Eagles should walk away with a win. Now, I'm going to try, and we know how this has been going of late, I'm going to try to give you some insight into what some of the national media folks are saying about Jalen Hurts. Now, I will need all of you in the comments to let me know if you can hear it or not, because for some reason the other day especially, every time I went to share something on the screen, it went to poo-poo, and we can't have that. So I'm going to throw this over, and hopefully everybody's going to be able to hear it. And if you can't, you're going to let me know, and I'm going to have to take it down and put it back up, and it's the whole thing. I first want to start with all-time great Eagles backup quarterback, Chase Daniel. Not Chase Daniels, Chase Daniel, who backed up Carson Wentz and seems to really have a bone to pick with either the Eagles or perhaps with Jalen Hurts for some reason. I want to start with Chase Daniel. Let's go to him first, and let's hear what he has to say about Jalen Hurts. And the question that was posed is the criticism of Jalen Hurts too harsh? Let's hear what Chase Daniel had to say, because that's what it's all about. It's like the hokey pokey. That's what it's all about. Here we go.
I love that.
That's a great word to say it.
I love that. And I do think that at times, sure, it can be harsh, but at sometimes it's warranted when he's throwing the football. And I actually 100% agree with Nick Sirianni, and 100% agree with what you said. I actually think he's playing extremely well for the stuff that they're asking him to do. I think
for the stuff they're asking him to do. Oh, I feel slander coming. Is slander on the way again, Chase Daniel? Did you wake up feeling salty, a little bit spicy, un poco picante? Is that what is happening, Chase Daniel? Okay. He's doing a great job for what they're asking him to do. Okay. All right. Let's keep going.
for right now, for what they want him to do, like in my opinion, Jalen Hurts has always been a little bit of a limited passer when it comes to like.
We're back to this. The limited passer. Okay.
These extremely crazy concepts that you're seeing different quarterbacks do. Not that he can't do it. He feels more comfortable.
So hold on a second, because he just kind of made it sound like he's not a good passer, so he can't do these concepts, but now he's already contradicted himself within 8 seconds to, well, it's not that he can't do it, it's just that he doesn't like to do it, so he can't, he doesn't have the ability, or he doesn't want to. He doesn't like it, doesn't have the desire. What? Okay, we'll continue.
In the shorter underneath throws, but he also throws a really good deep ball and a go ball. I don't think you want Jalen Hurts reading these extremely complicated like route concepts.
You don't want Jalen Hurts having to read difficult, complicated route. Is he stupid? Is he dumb? Are we back to the Rush Limbaugh, Donovan McNabb argument here, Chase Daniel? Is that what we're doing? Is that where we are right now? Is this how it's happening? So he You don't want him to have to do anything advanced. Jalen Hurts, give Jalen Hurts ball. Jalen Hurts run. Give Jalen Hurts slant route to throw. Sometimes give Jalen Hurts ball, throw, go route. Yes. That's all Jalen Hurts is apparently capable of doing. Thank you, Chase Daniel. Okay, let's continue.
Because at times it slows him down. And I think that's the thing that sometimes
it slows him down. Having to read complex coverages and complex routes slows him down. Well, in theory, if you are going through your reads, it's going to take you a little bit longer than if you just go to your first read immediately and throw the ball. Yes, that is how that works. And he knows that because he's played in the NFL. He also has a great offensive line that affords him the ability to read a defense and to have the time to execute a play. Now, whether or not he makes the right decision, you can have your own opinion about that. But the reason that he has the time and that he takes the time to supposedly read the defense is because he's afforded it, because he has a great offensive line. All right, we'll continue.
as we say is like, hey, it looks like he's playing in slow-mo. Is he not processing? Is he not doing this? No, you give him half-field reads, and there's nothing wrong with that. You give him full-field reads. You give him full progression. We call them, we haven't said it a long time, sweepers, which Kellen Moore is doing, is sweep the field. And I think at times, the only criticism that I have, and
there's only one criticism. Now, if you've been keeping up with Chase Daniel, there are more than one criticism. All right, well, fine. One criticism.
people think I'm a huge Jalen Hurts hater. I'm not. I just want to see him let go of the football in 50-50 ball situations, because you have one of, if not the best duos in all of football with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And when you look at the Eagles team on offense, I think they're a superstar team. Like, you look at the best offensive line in football, 4 of the 5 were either named All-Pro, Pro Bowl, or both. Like, the whole offensive line has something.
That is a fair critique. That is a fair, if you want to call it a criticism, I wouldn't, but that is fair to an extent, sure. The offensive line is highly touted. We all know that the Eagles have arguably the best offensive line in football. That's fine. The idea of Hurts having to be willing to throw a 50-50 ball to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, we'll get back to that in a second. There is a little bit of truth to it. We'll get there. All right, so far, Chase Daniel kind of pulling his head out of his keister. And in fairness, from one big-headed human to another, and he's a pretty big head. You got to dislodge it. Probably not that easy, but all right. It's starting to make a little bit more sense. But he does have about 20 seconds here to screw it up again, so let's see.
You have the best receiving duo in football. You have the best running back in football. And because his supporting cast is so great, I think the one thing that we decide to look at and decide to pick at is Jalen Hurts. Not to say he's not great, because the dude was all pro. But I think right now, this season, he's only thrown for 2,900 yards. So at times, the criticism is warranted when he doesn't do the things that they ask him to do.
Well, he only threw 2,900 yards, due in part to the fact that he had a concussion that cost him multiple games. That could maybe be a little bit of it. They had the best running back in the league, who perhaps could have set the single-season rushing record if he had played in Week 18, or perhaps had continued playing against the Giants in the first matchup against New York this season. I don't know if Chase is aware of this. There really are only so many possessions you have. There are only so many plays you have. And if you do, in fact, have a guy who's within striking distance of setting the all-time rushing record, chances are that quarterback is not going to set his own personal records. And if he misses multiple games because of a concussion, it's possible that he's not going to be able to reach an arbitrary threshold that you have set because he has missed multiple games. Okay, now that we've cleared that up, Chase Daniel actually made a little bit of sense there. Here's the problem, and there's a big problem. Earlier in the season, and even last season, as the Eagles were collapsing, what was one of the big critiques and one of the big criticisms of Jalen Hurts? It was that he was turning the ball over too much. Whether it was interceptions, whether it was fumbles, he was turning the ball over. And ultimately, down the stretch last year, the Eagles fell apart. And they got their doors blown off in the playoffs against Tampa Bay. You fast forward to the first 4 weeks of this season. There were a lot of criticisms, once again, of Jalen Hurts and his ability to maintain the ball, maintain possession, not turn it over. Around the bye week, there was a conversation had between Sirianni and Hurts, which was in an article that we'll get to here in a little bit. Fantastic reporting by Tim McManus. They had this conversation, and they clearly made it a point of emphasis that this team can win and Jalen Hurts can win without having to force anything, without having to do what Chase Daniel's old starting quarterback Carson Wentz used to do, which was try to throw the ball into the tightest window in triple coverage and oftentimes turn the ball over. Jalen Hurts has the arm strength to get you down the field on a 50-50 ball. But if you're winning because you're protecting the ball, and if you're winning because you're setting up and establishing a running game that can bust a big play open at any time in a game, and if you have a great tight end who can either blow the top off a defense or can get you critical yards in a short yardage situation in Dallas Goedert, you can lean on that and win games. And yeah, you know what? You might not want to throw a 50-50 bomb right down the field and risk an interception, but you can get Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown the ball 10, 15 yards down the field and get them in open space and let them pick up a ton of yards after making that catch. All of those things are possible within this offense. But a big part of why the Eagles have been winning and winning the way they have since the bye week in week 5 is because Jalen Hurts has fundamentally changed the way that he plays to protect the ball, to maintain possession, and limit mistakes. You can't, on one hand, criticize the guy for taking those shots at the end of last year and the beginning of this season and turning the ball over, and then at the same time, complain that he's not turning the ball over because he's not taking those same shots now. Are they winning games? Yes. Do they look as strong as they ever have? Yes. Does Jalen Hurts put up 300 plus yards per game? No. Did Jordan Love have more passing yards and completions last week than Jalen Hurts? Yes. Did the Packers win? No. What would you prefer? Seth Joyner, I don't remember if I played this clip earlier in the week. Seth Joyner was like the voice of reason this week. It was amazing. And one of the things that he said was people got to get off of Hurts. They got to get off his back, right? Like the things that people were complaining about on Monday about, well, Jalen Hurts, he's not playing elite enough football as a quarterback of this team. He doesn't look like a legitimate throwing threat. That's not going to work in the playoffs. Those people would have apparently preferred a Jordan Love-esque game where you throw for 200 plus yards, but then you throw multiple interceptions. Like apparently don't change the formula. If you're the Eagles, you don't change the formula. And if you have a quarterback who's getting paid to be the franchise cornerstone like Jalen Hurts is, and he is willing to do this and is understanding of the concepts and understanding of if this is how we're going to have to win, this is how we're going to have to win. If he's willing to put what most consider a big ego from a quarterback aside to go out and not put up gaudy numbers through the air and not take those shots and risk possessions, if he's willing to do that, then everyone else just needs to back off, man.